to the Andrew McNally residence. My name is Raymond Fernandez.
And I'm Charles Spratley.
We are here to go over this beautiful residence and kind of give you some insight with respect to Andrew McNally himself, as well as the architecture and what the man was involved with and why he is important as of even today. This home was built in 1887 and it was completed in 1888. Andrew McNally himself was born in 1836 and he died in 1904. He actually passed away at his residence here of pneumonia. He was quite an accomplished man. He was a print map maker. He was involved with Rand McNally, if anyone remembers the old maps that perhaps some of us may have utilized in the 80s, 90s, McNally Rand Thomas Brother guides.
And before we head on inside, it's interesting for us to point out some of the architectural highlights of this house. Now, as Raymond mentioned, it was actually designed by Frederick Rohrig. Now, Rohrig actually did many very important buildings in this area, including the beautiful Hotel Green, as well as the Neff House in La Mirada. This is very different than a lot of Victorian time period houses, mostly because this is a house that was owned by one of the wealthiest men in the United States with the largest publishing company. But from the exterior, it is, even though it's Queen Anne, it doesn't have the elaborate gingerbread that is attached to it. This is a very interesting design element, including it has those beautiful casement windows and it goes up into the bell eaves and of course that little turret at the very top. But it's unique, it's absolutely beautiful, and it speaks of the man and the time in which it was built. So let's go on inside. And here we are in the beautiful receiving room. We actually just came right through that extra large front door. So this would be a great place for maybe a hat coat tree would be a setup. This would be a place to receive guests before bringing them into the heart of the house itself. Has some beautiful art glass in here. And one of the things that's very interesting is that even though this house is built in that 1887, McNally, very forward thinking. You can tell it in the architectural highlights in this house as well. All of this inside wood is redwood with the stencil work that is brought in. And as well as, instead of more traditional Victorian, we have this almost what they would at least deem a modernistic, which is almost craftsman in its style. A lot of people have actually said it reminds them of the works of Otto Wagner, who was very much into that modern style during that time period. And then the stairwells will go up into the private part or the family part of the house. But this is actually where you came to receive your guests as you came to the beautiful McNally mansion. And right now, Raymond actually wants to talk a little bit about why he came to the Pasadena, Altadena area.
Yes, Andrew McNally was from Chicago and he came via rail to San Francisco initially. And then from San Francisco, he came down to San Pedro. From San Pedro, once again, he came down to Altadena, Pasadena. A lot of the reasons why he came here was because he wanted to get away from the brutal winters of Chicago. And when he came down here and realized how great the weather was, he decided that this was a place where he would want to build a home. So in 1887, he commissioned an architect, and then also that architect drew up some plans, which again was about $15,000 in that time. And in 1888, the house was completed. He loved the area. He purchased 15 acres. He was, once again, a horticulturist, and he loved the fact that the hills and the mountains behind his residency brought water to the land quite easily. And the house, by design, was built where he could look south. So the front yard pointed south with respect to being able to have a railway system that could take him to Pasadena personally and privately. And he had so much fruit and vegetables and plantations, citrus. He had Christmas Tree Lane. There was just so much that he did. He also inspired a lot of his millionaire friends at that time to come down and invest and buy certain properties here as well. In fact, they deemed it Millionaire's Row. And again, Christmas Tree Lane, which some of us may be aware of, is something that he was a part of as well.
Now, one of the things that's interesting about this section of the house is there are several living rooms in this house, and this is actually 2 living rooms. There is one over on this side, and then there is one on this side, and they are actually connected with these 2 little entryways, and they have a twin fireplace on either side as well. So they're using only one chimney. And one of the things that's interesting is that this room is octagonal in its design, because this is where the turret is for the 3rd floor going up. Now, one of the things that's interesting about this house that is different than a lot of homes that were refurbished as the years went by is that the owners of the house, who have actually owned the house for over 50 years, when they were doing the restoration of the house, they wanted to keep a lot of the original flavor of this house. So 24 of the fixtures in this home are still lit by gaslight, as well as 2 of the radiators, including this one over here, still use gas. Now let's make our way through the receiving room into the beautiful dining room area.
Here we have the McNally dining room for the family. Andrew McNally had 2 sons and 2 girls. He was a family man. He was quite family oriented, and this is where they shared their experience of fine dining and conversation. Not much has changed with respect to the home since then. They've tried to keep it as original as possible, but again, we wanted to share with you the dining room of the McNally residence.
We actually traveled upstairs because we are now in the private part of the house. Now, the one thing is that a lot of it would have been painted at this time period. The woods are not as nice as they were downstairs because this is the part of the house that the public isn't going to see. Now, over the years, because other people have lived here, this is also one of the most modern parts of the house itself. And we are in the master bedroom right here, including in this room. This is where Andrew McNally, unfortunately, passed away in 1904 of pneumonia. This is also a rounded room because we are above that living room area, and then right above us is the beautiful turret. Now, in this room, one of the things that you notice is there are transoms above all of the doors. This room also has a beautiful fireplace, which actually is no longer functional, and it has a bathroom that was later added, of course, because there was no plumbing at the time when the house was built, as well as this house has one of those unusual things that a lot of upper class Victorians had. It had closets. So we're actually going to make our way out of Andrew McNally's personal bedroom. We're going to make our way down the hallway because I want to show you how the house changed a little bit over the years. But this section of the house, pretty much from where we are at, going back, was part of the latter addition that was done in the 1890s. As Raymond mentioned, the Turkish room, we'll be showing that to you towards the end. But this section right here was part of that build in which it connects all the way to servants' quarters. They had 3 full-time servants living in the house, and this is where they lived. And the house, this part of the house was originally lit by gas pipes.
Here we are in the servants' sitting room of the McNally home, and there were some pictures that McNally made and publicized with respect to trying to lure his millionaire friends over from Chicago to get them to come here and invest and buy land as well. You'll see a series of pictures where there's the home with people that are standing out in front of it. Now, those people that are out there are actually real people, but they're staged. It was a picture that was taken by design where it's staged for them to take a picture where they're posing, etc., looking quite busy out in the garden and in the flower fields. One of the pictures actually does not have the Turkish room yet, because once again, although the home was built in 1887, the Turkish room wasn't brought over until about 1995. So you'll see a picture where it has no Turkish room whatsoever, where there are people standing out there. And then in another picture, you'll go ahead and see that the Turkish room is there, but it doesn't look quite yet like it's been constructed to be attached with the home. And then on the third picture you'll see the Turkish room there with the house, and you'll see a lone child and his mother out working the gardens as well. So this home has something that's very unique about its design, is that of course it has 3-story rotunda, and we're at the very top of this rotunda. This was very important to Mr. McNally because being the horticulturist and naturalist that he was, he loved nature. He loved to go out and see the breathtaking views of Southern California. And at that time, he could see all the way out to Catalina with respect to this location within the home. This location sits on top of his bedroom, and then below his bedroom sits the living room. Fred Rohrig, again, was the designer of this home, and Mr. McNally wanted this piece of the home added because it was unique in its landscape and architecture style, and it sits right next to Christmas Tree Lane.
And this actually is one of the latter additions to the house. This is the carriage house. The original carriage house actually burnt down in 1926, and then this was installed in 1971. It captures the original flavor of the house.
This was Mr. Andrew McNally's aviary. Of course, it looks quite different than the way it did back in 1889. However, this was a passion of his. He was, in his heart, he was actually a horticulturist. That was his passion. Of course, his love for map making, etc. was one thing, but his real desire was to plant trees, especially citrus, lemon. He also loved to have a lot of birds. One of the reasons why he moved to Altadena was that he thought that because the foothills of the mountains were so close that he could access water and make something very lush and beautiful and green. So this is one example. Again, it's changed over the years, but this is where he actually would spend a lot of time taking care of something that meant a lot to him with respect to his aviary.
Now, one of the things that's extremely fascinating and very unique to this house. Now, Andrew McNally, this was his winter home. His main residence was in Chicago, where he ran McNally. Now, one of the things that was interesting that he had on the side was he was doing all these different little civic projects. And one of the things was he was on the board of directors for the 1893 Chicago World Fair. Now, after the World's Fair, everything had to be dismantled. And he actually took a chunk of the World's Fair and he brought it to his home. I want to welcome you to what is known as the Turkish Room. This is actually my favorite part of the house, but it takes away the breath of many people who come here because it is so unique. Now, it's easy to imagine when the World's Fair that they would have this little building set up, and then because of the Victorian time period, it was able to be disassembled in panels and probably shipped over here, and then they did some minor architectural adjustments to it and then reassembled it right here. Up here in the beautiful, what they would call Moorish design during the time period is what is known as Lincrustal Walton. It is first generation embossed wallpaper, which was fairly new at the time, and it was all hand painted. And then up here we have the beautiful Arabic script. Some actually say that this quotes from the Quran. But this is the beautiful Moorish room, or Turkish room as they called it. This was also known as the smoking room. It's very masculine in its design, and it has the beautiful little trellis work, the lighting, and of course the multicolored couches. And we have a beautiful picture over here, a tapestry of Cleopatra as well. Now, one of the things is I love sometimes how interesting historical events is introduced into pop culture. And one of the things I found absolutely fascinating when I was doing some research for this house is that this room was actually in the show Entourage, which played up for television for several years. And I love it. You can actually see the clip on YouTube, and they are in this room, and they are very comedically, the guys from Entourage are buying marijuana from Val Kilmer of all people. Yeah, Val Kilmer of all people. That. He's actually playing this hippie drug dealer that is known as the Sherpa.
And this actually
in this room right here, and yeah, they actually filmed the scenes of it in this house.
Real genius.
Yeah, real genius. So if you get a chance, just go ahead and look it up, and you'll find it extremely comedic.
Nice.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming and joining us today for our little tour of the Andrew McNally house. I am Charles Spratley.
And I am Raymond Fernandez.
And we hope to see you very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.